All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome everyone to our April Tableau user group event. My name is Chris Monahan, and I'm the president of Zeomatrix. We're one of the two partners, along with Technion Data Solutions, that sponsor the Texas Tug. We help organize the monthly meetings along with the help of our other amazing members of our Tug Advisory Council. So thank you all for joining. For those that are first timers, just a little bit about the group. Our virtual Tug is sort of a combination of folks all across Texas. So we include the Austin Tug, the Dallas-Fort Worth Tug, San Antonio Tug, and Houston Tug. So it's a big Tableau user community. We hold our events monthly, and our goal is to bring you guys great speakers, presentations, and information from all across the Tableau community in one place. So for this event, we've had over 360 registrants from all over the country. So thank you all for your interest and participation. It's very amazing to see just all you guys' passion for data and for Tableau. So with that, we have a great event planned for you today. Let's review the agenda and we'll sort of move on to the presentation. So first, we'll go through some housekeeping announcements. Want to talk about the meeting format that we're going to have. This is a Zoom, so if you have your audio hooked up, please put it on mute while we have our speakers present. Then we'll talk about some upcoming events. We're going to talk about a new cool sort of event that we're going to put together called Networking Breakout Sessions. I'll get to that in a second. And then we're going to have two presentations, one by JLL about real-world dashboards, how they went ahead and turned a dashboard from a basic heat map into an award-winning dashboard. And then we'll also see a presentation about what's new in Tableau 2021.1. So let's jump to it. First of all, just a little bit of Zoom etiquette for everyone. I know we've all been doing some sort of video conferencing over the past year, so you're all used to it. But just in case, here are some of the ground rules. Please share your video if you wish. Gallery view is the best. So in the top right corner, go ahead and click that, and you can see everybody else's faces. Secondly, please observe like general Zoom etiquette, right? So if you're not speaking, please just put it in mute. We also have a chat window in Zoom. So if you want to add any comments or chat with others or post some links or ask some general questions to our presenters, go ahead and please put that into the chat. As far as presentations go, we're going to have our speakers go ahead and present. And then after each speaker, please hold your questions until the end so that we can do a Q&A after each speaker. Feel free to unmute if you want to ask a question, or you simply just post it in the chat. And after each speaker, I'm also going to give a link to the chat that'll give you a short survey. We're trying to collect feedback in order to make these presentations and events better. So please respond. We'd love to get your input and feedback. One big announcement for all of you that have not seen it or received an email: Tableau 2021 is out. It is GA. It is wonderful. It's great. You're going to see a lot of cool features and a demo later today. So if you don't have it, please download it and give it a test run. Upcoming events. We have two big events coming down the pipe. One is our Tableau Datadev Hackathon. For y'all that don't know what the hackathon is, it's open to everyone. It's a contest to see who has the most creative and interesting ways to use Tableau. So this can be anything from integrations to extensions or tools or anything using the API. So if you're a little bit tech savvy and you can hack together a sort of a cool demo or prototype, I encourage you to join this. There's the registration link. And if you win, the top prize is $2,500 in cash plus $1,000 donated to charity on behalf of Tableau. So it goes to a great cause. Please join, please participate. The other event that's coming down the pipe is our May Texas Tug, and that's going to be on May 13th. Please come to the event. It's going to be amazing. We have Zen Master Kevin Freelich that's going to be speaking there around Tableau tips and even some secret tips that you never saw coming. So a little bit of sneak peek or sorry, I should say teaser there. So please join and see it. And then also at this event, we're going to be doing something new. It's a new concept that we have called networking breakout rooms. And it's going to be about 30 minutes long. It's a really cool concept. I'm going to give sort of a high level of what we're thinking, but I'll send out a survey because I want to get y'all's input too on what the format should be and topics you'd be interested in. So what, first of all, is a breakout session? So a breakout session is sort of, we've been trying to, as our advisory board meets once a month. We've been trying to come up with new ways to have people interact a little bit more since we're all virtual. And how do we get people, into more intimate sort of conversations and talk about topics that interest them. So we came up with this concept of breakout sessions, which is just a really great way for people to meet each other and sort of learn about interesting Tableau topics. So how will this concept sort of work, right? So at our next Tug, we're going to dedicate 30 minutes of the Tug for these network breakout sessions. And there's a feature in Zoom, some of you might have already been participating in these, called breakout rooms. And so we'll break these out into rooms based on various topics. It might be Tableau show and tell. It might be intro to Tableau. It might be strategy and adoption, but various topics that you're interested in. And all you have to do is choose a room you want to join and join it via Zoom. So with that, we have a lot of different topics that I'd like to share with you. Here's something soon. And I'd like to get everyone's feedback. Simply check the ones that interest you. But some of the topics that we've thrown out there as a group, and we're open to other ones as well, is Tableau show and tell. Basically 5 minutes to show something cool to the group. Now there's 30 minutes, so we'll be able to share a few of these to the audience, but I think that's a really cool concept. The second would be lightning talks. Again, a 5-minute presentation. We think of this almost like mini TED Talk. So it's not necessarily like showing a particular dashboard. It might be more around strategy, concepts, things that are important in a Tableau community. The other one would be a presenter deep dive. So this would get you more access to the presenters themselves that have presented at the Tug, so you can ask them more in-depth questions, more in a one-on-one sort of setting. Then we also have concept of Tableau doctor sessions. I think this one's going to be really interesting to a lot of folks. If you have some topics that are more challenging, or you just need a second pair of eyes to look at something, I recommend going to this session, because this would be something where you could get 5 minutes of consultation. There'll be other folks also in the room. So maybe as a whole, we can all collaborate and figure out a solution to your problem. The other three are more around various categories with Tableau. So one would be intro to Tableau desktop. So for beginners that are new, please join this session. The other one would be Tableau administration. So if you want best practices and how to implement Tableau server administration, user security, join that one. And the last one's around strategy and adoption. So we're all looking to build a data culture. Let's share the best practices, that some of our organizations have tried and has been successful, and we can bring that together as a group. So these are just some of the topics. Like I said, I'll post something to the chat window here that's a survey, and I'd love to get your feedback. We have an all additional comments window. So if you think of other topics, please fill them out, and we'll go ahead and add those to the list of breakout rooms. All right. So with that, I'd like to introduce sort of our first presenters here. They're from JLL, and it's Simon Beaumont. He's the BI Center Excellence Director, and also I should mention a Tableau Zen Master and Ambassador, and then Chris Lay, who is the BI Business Partnering Director. So for those of you that are not familiar with JLL, it's a global property management company, and Simon and Chris work in the Facility Solution Group, and they provide solutions to organizations to help them manage their global facilities. Now, Chris and Simon, they actually reside all the way over in London, so we really appreciate them taking the time to speak to us today, especially since it's pretty late. But they're going to walk us through the process of how they took like a simple heat map and transformed it into an award-winning global KPI dashboard. Now, I've seen this dashboard. It's amazing. It's so amazing that it's going to be featured in Steve Wexler's new book. So I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with Steve Wexler, but he's the co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards. A lot of you probably own it. If you don't own it, I highly recommend it. Go get it. It's awesome. So it's pretty big honor for them to be featured. So with that, I'll turn it over to Simon and Chris. You guys take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Could you just let me know when you can see my screen, please?
Yeah, stop share. There you go.
Brilliant.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So it's Chris here, the second Chris on the meeting tonight. There's probably others as well. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. And Simon and I tonight, or today rather, are going to take you through our journey of this real world dashboard. And we're going to talk about how we've gone from tables to insights in this dashboard. And just to kick off there, a really lovely dashboard and a really old car. I wish I had that, but unfortunately it's not my car. So let's just introduce ourselves. So Simon, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So I've had the pleasure of working at JLL now. It's slightly scary to say, for nearly 3 years. Time has flown by. We've got the pleasure of working with some great people like Fee Gordon, Paul Chapman, Chris Curtis. We've got a great community. I lead the Centre of Excellence on one of our largest accounts. So my responsibility is for the analysts to leverage their ability and allow them to achieve their ambitions and be the best they can every day. But ultimately, my team is there to surface the insights and allow the business to improve. Thank you, Chris, for the kind introductions earlier. So I'm really honoured. The Tableau community has made me in terms of where I am today. I never expected to end up in a global role, let alone a Tableau Zen Master. But I love what I do and I love the community. So it's great to be here today. Thank you.
And for me, I'm Business Partnering Director. So you may wonder what that role is all about. Well, all the great dashboards that we produce within our BI team are only as good really as the people who use the dashboards. So my role is very much about taking those dashboards and making sure that people within the business can get the best value from them and therefore get those data-driven insights that we're looking for. So it's a bit of a crossover role between using Tableau, understanding data and understanding where it all comes from, but then also putting myself in the shoes of the people who are going to use it. So a bit of a different role there, and throughout my career, I've always been in those sorts of roles, originally starting out as a physicist, and you may wonder, how does a physicist get into data? Well, actually, physicists and experiments are all about what happens to data, what happens to that sample that you look at and then you analyze. And it's all about that journey of what you do to something and the end result that you get out of it at the end of the day. So let's move on and think about our dashboard now. And this dashboard, we're very pleased and proud that it's won a global KPI project award from a company, from an organization called Data-IQ. Data-IQ is a UK-based company that's a group of data people. And the award is published by Tableau. And for those of you who can see the video, I've actually got the award here. It's a transparent thing, so it doesn't project too well. But we're very, very proud to win that last autumn. So let's just set the scene for what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're talking to you about our global KPI dashboard. Simon and I work for on an account within JLL, and the account is for a global financial organization. And every month we have to produce for them a global KPI dashboard, which are the contractual measures that we are obliged to meet every month. And this talk is going to be about the journey as how we've gone from our original dashboard into our new award-winning dashboard. And in that journey, we went through we started off by thinking about what the problem was. What are we trying to solve? And we went through a fairly standard process from that point of view. So as I say, we asked what the problem is and what we were trying to solve. And Simon, could you just go to the next slide, please? There we are. So we looked at what we were trying to solve and what was the solution? What do we need to get to do this? And we then thought about what questions are we trying to answer? What do we want to find out from this dashboard? Now, to show you our starting point, the heat map that we've got here is probably a fairly standard sort of dashboard that several of you have seen and perhaps used. It was a series of metrics, and we split it down by a series of regions and then into a series of countries. And it was a bit dull, but it actually did the job. But it didn't really tell us much more than that. It just told us that we had a red or green, a pass or a fail. But it didn't really tell us, you know, when we're looking from a global perspective, where did we miss the target and by how much? And then we've got a number up there. Some of the red numbers are 95% or something like that. But what does that 95% mean? Does it mean we missed on 1 out of 20 measures? Or perhaps it was 500 in 10,000. So in other words, what's the context? It's showing you a monthly view, but what happened last month? What happened 2 months ago? We really can't tell from this particular dashboard and this particular view. And then the people using it, we've got a series of metrics there. We've anonymized there on this display here. It says, you know, metric 1 and 7 and things like that. But in the real world, what does that KPI really mean? How do you explain it? Where does it come from? What's the calculations behind it? So all of those questions we couldn't really answer from this very, very standard heat map view that we had. As I say, it did the job. It stood us in good stead for a number of years. So let's now talk to you about some of the design thinking that we went through as we went from that old dashboard to this new dashboard, which is the one we're going to show you and flash up on screen now. So this is the end point, and I hope you'll agree it's a completely different view, completely different look and feel, much cleaner, but it's also got much, much more information. So let's now look a little bit more in detail at that, and let's now explore the questions that we were trying to answer. So I've indicated some of those a few moments ago, but we really want to know, where did we miss the target and by how much? As we said, we wanted to know what 95% was. Was it 500 in 10,000 or 1 in 20? And we wanted to see how performance varied over time. So in trying to think about how that dashboard could be more engaging and what we could do, as I say, we went through and put in various design elements into that dashboard. And Simon's now going to take us through some of those and illustrate some of those within Tableau.
This is where I'm going to cross my fingers and absolutely pray that my PC holds up, because I'm going to dive into Tableau and actually show you some of this. So throughout it, I'm just going to give a hat tip as well to the community. A lot of what we do in JLL is not unique to us. We absolutely believe in the phrase that Andy Cotgreve evangelizes, which is "steal like an artist." So a massive shout out to the community who have actually inspired a lot of the design choices that we did. So when you think about the concept of an alarm bell, which I'm about to show you, that was actually inspired by a blog post by Ken Flurlage. Context dots, that was created by Heshen Issa when he was on placement with us from the data school, and Heshen was actually the author of the dashboard, working alongside Chris and myself. So we wanted to use visual prompts. We wanted fundamentally to reduce the visual complexity to minimize the time to get to insights. We wanted to simplify our journey whilst offering more. And the way that we did that was not via more text. It was not via more numbers. It was using interactivity. It was using visual prompts and cognitive things that people were already familiar with. If you've got an iPhone, you know what an alarm bell means because you're used to those notification pop-ups. You're used to seeing those numbers. So we've used alarm bells to say how many areas have we got where we have missed performance, but we also used context dots to say, hey, there's something to look at here to encourage people to take the onion and go to the next layer so they can actually understand and go beyond just the single number and understand the context and the meaning. So this is a Tableau user group. So without further ado, I'm going to try and jump into Tableau. So Chris, could you just give me a thumbs up or a nod if you can see Tableau, please? Thank you. So this is the dashboard that Chris flashed up on screen in the presentation. What you'll see is you can see alarm bells up here, and you can see alarm bells in each section. So what this is telling us is this dashboard is looking at a range of metrics across a range of countries. So that's the grain of the data. Now, if you're a global director, you want to have some context of, well, how many countries have missed by how many metrics? And this is made up data. So please take that into account. This has all been anonymized and safeguarded for the organization to allow us to share it externally. But what the alarm bells immediately tell us is for the month of May 2020, there were a total combination of 324 measures across our countries. And of those 324 measures across the countries, 42 failed to meet the target. So immediately you're allowing the person and the consumer to say, well, what's the scale of my performance concerns? Yeah, there's a lot of blue in here, which is our accessible color for compliance. So there's a lot of blue. Immediately, the natural look of this is, well, you know what, everything's fine. But when you go beneath it, we want to be the best we can consistently for all of our clients across all of our geographic regions. So it's really important to have context that there is something you want to look at. So if you then click on the alarm bell, you can then drop down a pop-up using collapsible containers, and it can actually tell you which metrics across which countries those 42 relate to. So you can see that metric 23 in region 3 has failed in country 39, and you don't just stop there. We actually tell you that country was 92.1%, which was actually equivalent to 3 out of 38 units failing. So we don't try and overload by making that on screen at the point in time. We allow people the visual prompt, click on it, find more information, guide them through a curated journey of their dashboard and their performance to always allow them to get the insights they need to take meaningful action that will benefit our staff, our consumers, and our clients. And as I said, we also have a context dot. So this dot here tells me that for this metric, we were 99.1%, which actually was above the target of 98. Everything fine. But the little dot signifies, yes, globally we're fine, but actually there are a couple of countries that did miss that metric. And again, using Vision Tooltips, so again, going back to that same concept of you don't have to show everything at once, we are able to hover over the dot and immediately see which countries there were as a visual prompt to say, be aware, you need to be aware of this to take immediate action if that's necessary. So again, it's about not showing everything, but giving them in bite-sized chunks to make it very accessible, very meaningful for your end user that answers the business questions that they need to know. So those are the alarm bells and context dots, but we've also got Sparklines and Vision Tooltips. So just diving into that, the Sparkline for us was really important. When you go back to that original heat map, as Chris said, one of the primary challenges of that is you only get a single month at a time. And we know that natural variation exists. So yes, you can be 99% one month, you could be 98% the month before. Is that normal? Does it always fluctuate? How does that look in context? So we tried to show performance, and we tried to show that over time using Sparklines, but we also tried to add some color context to the Sparklines to allow you to see when performance was over or under target with the blue colored dots. And as I said previously, we also used Vision Tooltips a lot to be able to go down to the next layer down. So I'm just going to jump back into Tableau. So as an example of that, here's the Sparkline, and you can hover over it, and you will notice in the tooltip, you always get the context of what was the numerator and denominator for that month. You get the dotted line to say where the target is, and that's done dynamically behind the scenes. A lot of work went into the data architecture for this. So all of this is actually based on one aggregated data set, which allows us to do some of these cool things without needing to do LODs or complex blending. And as I say, in terms of the Vision tooltip, you'll see here, all of these metrics are blue. There are no countries that are non-compliant, but it was 98.3%. So actually, if you hover over it, you can then see which countries had failing work orders or failing units, but didn't necessarily result in a failing target. So again, we're just always encouraging people to say, well, where were those 31 units in that metric that failed, even though the countries were compliant? And you can see here that country 6, for instance, had 254 failing units out of a total of 29,000. So it's again, just trying to give that context to say what could come back to bite us that we need to be aware of to take proactive action. And that's where we talk about the context. So we've got the how many, but also we wanted people to understand the definitions. It's really important for us from a data fluency perspective, not just for people to be able to read a number, to understand what they are reading. So one of the ways that we did that wasn't to do a traditional user guide. It wasn't to do a traditional how-to page where we explained every metric in a large amount of text. What we actually did is have a little paper symbol next to each individual metric where you can hover over it and read what the KPI is, you get a description, and you get the target. And that is dynamically rendering for each individual metric so that you can see how it works at any point in time. And those kind of techniques are common in this from a user experience perspective to minimize what's on screen at any one time. One of my absolute idols in the Tableau community is Ryan Sleeper. And I'll never forget watching Ryan at a Tableau conference when I was fortunate enough to see him in Europe. And he absolutely evangelized the benefits of remove complexity off the dashboard, remove text. And by doing so, you'll increase adoption and you'll increase engagement because it'll be easier for people to consume what they're looking at. And that is a concept we really take to heart with this dashboard. There's far more on screen, but there is equally just as much white space. So some of our, just to summarize in terms of our design choices, before we go on to some more functionality, absolutely white space is critical. We also use shapes as a visual prompt, but we also use colors as a visual prompt. And you will have noticed, just jumping back into the dashboard, the ability to switch between our JLL color accessible color palette and the traditional red, amber, green. We don't want to alienate people who are traditional and have grown up with red, amber, green and are not colorblind, but we recognize 10% of our male workforce are likely not to be able to consume a traditional red, amber, green. So whilst we've tried to tone down the colors and make it as easy for them to use as possible, we do also default it to an internal accessible color palette to make sure that this is available to all of our staff to be able to use. And so that's what we've done. That's a traditional red, amber, green on the left-hand side. That's an accessible color palette on the right-hand side. And that's actually part of our JLL Viz standards that is common across the organization. Accessibility is really important for us because we don't want to put any barriers to adoption across our workforce. And lastly, we've also got additional dashboards. So at the right-hand side of the dashboard, you will notice these little circles. These are actually click-throughs where you can access additional information within another dashboard that takes the metric and goes into a lot more detail. So remember, this is the summary helicopter view that talks about aggregation. Underneath each one of these, there is a detailed dashboard that allows you to go down to the transaction level, allows you to view data that's updated daily. So to make it easy, because we want to encourage people to go beyond the number, we always keep a symbol to the right-hand side that's got an arrow, and using URL click actions, if you click that, it would actually take you directly to the dashboard that relates to that metric. So again, making it as easy as possible for people to follow the journey and get the insights they need.
Okay, thanks, Simon. And just as you were speaking now, I saw a question pop up about whether some of the features here were in Tableau 2021. This dashboard was developed at the end of 2019, launched in 2020. So it's reliant on features. I'm not exactly sure which version of Tableau, but certainly what was current around about then at that point.
So Chris, pretty much as long as you've got the versions that can do set and parameter actions, pretty much you can do everything here. So I think it was 2020.1 that we'd have been using for this.
Yeah. Okay, so Simon's taken us through there some of the design thinking that we went through on that first bit of the dashboard, and that was enabling us to answer some of those questions that I posed earlier on. So where did we miss the target, by how much, what does it represent, how many countries were over performance? But the dashboard that we are showing you is a global dashboard, and the way in which the business is organized, we have a regional structure as well. So within a region, there'll be a number of countries. And therefore, there's an additional set of questions which we needed to answer as well, which we would like to help people see. And some of those questions are, for example, how do the regions compare? So how does the European region compare with the Americas, for example? And then how do I, as a particular country, compare to the overall global average? Am I above it or am I below it? And then if I'm putting myself in the shoes of a regional director, I want to see how all of my countries compare within that particular region. Is any one of those doing particularly well or needs a little bit of help? And how many countries have missed the target? And then I want to see what the percentage means in actual events. We've talked on this other dashboard view about 98%, but I want to see what that really means in terms of the actual number of units that I'm looking at. And of course, I also want to see the target. So we then set about designing a second view, which is actually more of a heat map view, but it's really a heat map view brought up to date. And this is what that looks like. So you see it's a series of squares with numbers in it, but the way in which it works is very, very different and much more engaging than that original red and green heat map that I showed you. So Simon's now going to take us through some of the interesting navigation points within that particular view.
Thank you, Chris. So here's what I made earlier. So I'm going to jump into the dashboard again. So we do use, a lot of this uses set actions to be able to click on something, expand it out. So there are blog posts, and I would encourage you to look at the work of Lindsay Porter. If you want to be able to understand set and parameter actions, she has done some amazing work, and a lot of this was taken from and inspired by what Lindsay did in the early days of the functionality coming out. But we know that anytime you go into an interactive website, or even if you go into Excel, God forbid, we have to talk about it occasionally, but you're normally used to, you click a plus button and it expands. It's just human nature, it's driven into us. You see a plus, you know there's more to do. So we actually built on that concept. And what you'll see here is a little plus above the region. And if you click on that, you expand the regions out to show the country. So I'm just going to show you that in action. So I'm going to go into the heat map view. And what you'll now see is your regions across the top. And again, we use the concept of an orange dot to say, if there is a country beneath the region that is non-compliant, the orange dot is exactly the same visual prompt as the first page to say, hey, there's something you need to look at below the layer of region. So we're going to click on the plus button. And what that's going to do is then expand it out. So you'll actually see the countries then expand out. And it means that we don't have to, if we just showed all the countries at start, you would overload the user because you're showing them lots of numbers. But in reality, by using the plus button, again, you're allowing them to be in control of their own destiny, allowing them to expand the numbers. So actually all of this, and if you want to just simply collapse it again, you double click on it, and it actually moves back to region level. So it's a very simple but effective use of taking a lot of data, compacting it up to a top level, but allowing a user to drill down using visual prompts and user interfaces that they are used to in their everyday life. And I promise you, to do that in Tableau is a damn sight easier than you would imagine. It will not take you long, and you definitely don't need to be a Zen master to do it. So this is a visual technique that any organization can do just by embracing some of the community posts that are out there. And we also wanted to, a lot of what we're sharing on this heat map, it's not rocket science. I'm not sharing any amazing visualization types. I'm not sharing any complex LODs. What we decided to do is add a fixed global column at the end for reference. So what you're able to see is that that's the regional values, but how does that compare to the global? So just by adding an additional sheet at the end, which is your global fixed references, again, it's all about adding context to say, how do I compare to what I've selected? And also, we've done something quite nice for the end user to be able to flip the label. So the default label shows compliant percentage. So that says that for these metrics here, we're 93.4% compliant in region 1 for metric 20. But if you want to see how many that is, you can flip the label to non-compliant, and then you simply get the number quoted as being the number of units that are non-compliant for that metric in that region. So again, it makes it very easy for the person to digest the context and understand 93.8% can mean many things, but in reality, it means that we failed 6 units of activity for that metric. So it gives them assurance of just how much do I need to act on this and how urgently do I need to act on it. And then we also use Viz and Tooltips, but on this view, because we didn't have the Sparkline, because this is a heat map, we actually embedded the Sparkline in the Viz and Tooltip So we actually gave it to people, still accessible, but it didn't need to overwhelm the initial view. And you'll notice again, these visual prompts using icons and shapes. So we actually put a little visual prompt to say the bar is the total volume and the line is the KPI value. And the reason for doing that, it then allowed us to hide the axes. So again, it reduced the ink on page because we put the prompts at the top. And just on that subject, you will notice on all the JLL dashboards as well, you see these little triangles, and that actually signifies that you can do something to this chart. So anytime you see a purple triangle, it's we call it a Toblerone, trademarked, I'm sure, but thankfully it's not in a food context, so hopefully it's all right. But we actually allow people to say, hey, you've got a visual prompt here to say, anytime you see a triangle, be aware you can interact with this chart and do something further to it than simply your traditional look at a number and filter it.
Okay, so we built this great dashboard, and so is it now time to relax? Can we sit back, kick off our shoes and have a beer? Well, no, I'm afraid not really, because if we just built that great dashboard and then didn't do anything else, it wouldn't really land, it wouldn't really work with the business. So there is still lots to do once you've got to this stage of building this great dashboard. So I just want to take a few moments to go through some of those additional steps that you need to think about when you're doing something like this so that you can really get the engagement of the business. And that's the release process. And a good release process is essential to get good adoption of the work. So say we can do all this great work within the BI team, but unless the business uses it, it's not really going to be worth our while to do that. And there are 4 things that we need to focus on. And those are communication, user guides, some sort of release video or release collateral of some description, and then also a way of actually pushing it out to the people. And we've done that with a series of conference calls. So all of those steps then come after the development of the dashboard, and they are perhaps, different technically from the dashboard, but they are as important if we're going to get good adoption of it. So with all of our dashboards, we always now produce a user guide, and we run our dashboards within the portal, and that user guide is directly accessible from the portal. It's usually done as a PDF guide, and it takes people through all of the elements of the dashboard, how to use the various elements, what they mean, how to click, how to do anything else that they want to do with it. So that's accessible to them right alongside when they're using the dashboard. And the other thing that we do, and I've just noticed a spelling mistake there, so I do apologize for that. We typically would do a video introduction as well for a significant dashboard like this one. And the video introduction is a bit like having me or Simon alongside you when you're going through the dashboard. So I produce a little talking head video with me down in the bottom corner, taking people through that particular dashboard, how to use the various elements of it. And those things make a huge difference in the way in which the dashboard is perceived within the business. So what we've done today is taken you through some of the design thinking and the journey that's made this particular dashboard great. And we've taken it through from that original red-green heat map into this much more interactive dashboard that we've been showing you there. And what this now means is that we can tell the full story. In the past, we struggled to see what was going on. We couldn't see beneath the surface. We couldn't peel back that onion, as Simon said. But now it's much more easy for people to do that. And there are clues to draw them in and tell them where to look for things. There's those bells that we talked about, the context dot, the little sparklines, the vision tooltips, those context numbers, the definitions, the careful use of white space and different chart types. So all of those things, as I say, now mean that anybody within our organization looking at this KPI dashboard can now tell their story to their peers and to our clients as well. And as I say, we were very pleased with this particular dashboard to be able to show it to other people. We're very, very proud that Steve has decided to put it into his next book, which is due out fairly soon. And we're very proud of the award that we won, which which was also sponsored by Tableau. So thank you all very much for listening. Hope you enjoy that, and we'll now take any questions that you may have.
Chris, Chris, just before we do hand over, just as a hat tip to the community, we've actually invested the time to create a JLL Tableau public page, and we've actually uploaded the dashboard available for you all to interact with that you see today on our Tableau public page. I hope you can appreciate, unfortunately, we haven't been able to make it downloadable because it is our intellectual property, and we firmly believe that data is one of our unique selling points and stand us out from our competitors. But we do want to offer something back to you. So if you do want to be able to reverse engineer and see any of the techniques that we've chosen today, please do go on to our Tableau public page, look at it for yourself, and you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us on Twitter. A lot of us are on Twitter in JLL. We passionately believe in the community. So please reach out to Fee, Paul, myself, Chris Curtis, Alex Jones, Justin Davis, Francisco Cardoza, Zach Bowders. I could go on. But we are all passionate to say we are here for you because we've learned so much from yourselves. So please, if you do want to learn from it, you're more than welcome to go on and have a look on our public page.
All right. Well, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Chris. That was an awesome presentation. The dashboard, I think it's obviously amazing. We got a lot of great feedback coming in from the chat. Thanks, Simon, for putting that out on Tableau Public. That was actually a great segue into one of the questions someone asked. So we'll be sending out Simon and Chris's information, as well as the link to the dashboard to the group after the event. But we have a couple questions here, Chris and Simon, that we wanted to field. I'll start with maybe one that's top of mind for me. Could you describe sort of your design process in you know, a lot of people struggle, like, where do I start? Do I do some sort of whiteboarding first, wireframe? How many people do I include in the design process? Is there too many cooks in the kitchen sort of scenario going on? Like, how do you guys do it?
So I would say we definitely don't jump straight in and build. And this is one of Chris's strengths, and that's why I'm so honored to work with Chris every day. Chris always grounds us in, we are there for the end user, not to be geeks and build charts for ourselves that, whilst it might satisfy me, I've got to be honest, Chris is always there saying, put the user at the center. So I'll hand over to Chris in 2 seconds, but one of the first things we did was we asked the business, what kind of questions do you want to ask of your data? We aren't trying to understand the user personas. And in this instance, we did actually all get together before coronavirus, and we are fortunate enough to be there in person and actually sketched out some thoughts on a whiteboard in terms of wireframing sketches to see how we thought the dashboard could be laid out. Chris?
Yeah, no, yeah, just to echo that, and what we basically do is a sort of fairly standard double diamond, I would call it, approach. So we would start off with those questions and exploring with the users what they really want. And as that thing happens, it sort of mushrooms out into something bigger. And then you really narrow it down to what they really need. And then we would start by effectively wireframing and knocking around a few different ideas, different charts. Does this work? Does this one work? No, this would be better from that. So we think about those, and then we would push those out to the users for some feedback. So as we go through this process, we would want to engage, or we do engage with the users so that we get their feedback at various steps along the way. And of course, that also then brings great benefits because it means the users are engaged in the development and they have some skin in the game on that final product that comes out the door. So it is that sort of double diamond, as I say, start at the beginning, ask them the questions, find out what they really need to answer, take it through, narrow it down, put it out to different stages, and then narrow it back down to that final product at the end.
Okay, yeah, that's great. That's great. One question that did come across was so what's the distribution of users you have at JLL? How many creators can publish, and do you enforce the application of your defined standards? I'm not sure if I got that part right, but how do you enforce the application of your standards?
You, I think, Simon.
Yeah, so Viz standards, for those that know me, Viz standards are really important and passionate for me. I truly believe that if you've got a product that looks consistent and is considered in terms of consistent use of color, where the filters are placed, how you design your charts, it gives people confidence and it gets a muscle memory. So you always return to your same websites because you get used to them, familiar, and you trust them. I want that same level of trust in our data. And by having consistent design standards, it helps us achieve that confidence amongst our users. So by standards, I'm not saying everything has to be a bar chart. Pretty much, I think the only rule we have, as long as it's not a pie chart, I'm pretty happy. But ultimately, as long as we've got the right charts and they're the simple charts, the important thing for me is that they're placed consistently. People have those Toblerones to be able to say, click here to do something. So we do have VIS standards across the organization, and we've actually invested in e-learning that Fee and I wrote that every analyst goes through to be able to embed that. So it's not just a tick list. We are educating and investing in our analysts because ultimately we want them to be the subject matter experts. We employ our analysts because they are the subject matter experts. They are the ones that are passionate about data. We want to empower them to be able to coach our end users into the most insightful designs. So we don't want our end users saying, well, what about this chart? What about this? We want them to tell us the business questions they want. So by having design standards, it gives the analysts some comfort of, well, actually, some of the work is done for you. What you can do is add the value by the analytical process, the critical thinking, to say, what do I want my dashboards to show? In terms of ratio of people, on our account, which is the one that we've shown this dashboard for, we've got about 10 people that create dashboards across about 2,000 users. Across JLL, we employ 90,000 people, and we have got hundreds of people with a Tableau license. We passionately believe in the value of data, so we want to empower people by having access to that data. But we don't necessarily do that by making them all creators. One of the things that we're doing on our account at the minute is actually rolling out web edit. So we're giving people curated data sources and saying, hey, use Tableau for ad hoc speedy analysis, which is far more effective than using Excel and having to rinse and repeat every time.
Okay, yeah, no, great. And I think that's a good point to bring up. I don't think enough people leverage web edit, and especially since the parity between that and desktop's getting closer and closer with every release. That's a great point to bring up. One other question we had here was, can you explain, and again, at a high level without getting too technical, explain how you're able to change the palette from a simple user action. So can you explain sort of how you did that?
Yeah, so you can do it two ways, and you could probably argue until the cows come home about which way is the most effective, but I'll just share with you the way that we did it, and then you can decide. So the way you could do it is use a parameter and then apply that parameter as a value to the circle and have different, so you could have compliant green, compliant blue, and then use that so it's one sheet, and you use the parameter to apply two different colors to it. That for me is quite complex because you have to manage quite a lot. So actually what we did is we used the parameter switch at the top, and we simply add two different sheets with a true and false filter on it, so that when you've got one parameter selected for the JLL color palette, it showed the sheets that we had the JLL color palette to, hid the other one, and vice versa. When you select the accessible color palette, or the red, amber, green one, sorry, it then hides the JLL accessible one. So it's two different ways of skinning the same cat, but ultimately, you choose the one that works for you. But again, I would encourage you, if you're not quite sure, and David, I think it was you that asked the question, David, if you're not quite sure how, just search parameter-driven color actions in Tableau, and I promise you there are websites and blog posts that have described it far better than me, and that's where we got the technique from.
Okay. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Simon, for that feedback. And Chris, thank you for presenting as well. I know it's getting late over there, so we will let you enjoy the rest of your evening. We will share Simon and Chris's information. We'll send that out. I guess everyone will give you a virtual round of applause here. Thank you very much. And we'll talk to you, Chris and Simon, later.
Okay.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Goodbye.
All right. So let me go ahead and share my screen, everybody. I'll go ahead and. So I know for our second presentation, I want to get straight to it. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is a longtime friend of the Tug community here, Bailey Ferrari. Bailey is a solutions engineer at Tableau, and she does amazing work helping organizations with strategic deployments. And recently, she was also recognized as Tableau's top solutions engineer of the year. So congratulations, Bailey. She's going to give us a presentation on what's new with 2021.1. And I know everybody's real anxious to see it. So check this demo out. Bailey, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for the shout out. I did not know you were going to give me my very own slide. So I really appreciate it. Before I share my screen, I want to take a moment and turn on my camera and double introduce myself. As Chris already said, my name is Bailey Ferrari. I am a solution engineer here at Tableau. I host a bunch of different webinars and activities for the community because I am so passionate about our product and I love working with people. So really excited to be here. Really appreciate that you're giving me your time. I'm only keeping my camera off because I sometimes run into bandwidth issues when I have my camera on and I'm demoing. So bear with me through that. And I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. Chris, please let me know if there are any issues sharing my screen.
No, we see it.
But you should be seeing. Wonderful. Okay. So the purpose of this presentation and my talk today is to walk through some of those new features in Tableau Desktop and the whole Tableau platform, really, 2021.1, which is kind of a mouthful. Say it 5 times fast if you're good at tongue twisters. But it's been a very, very, very highly regarded and really highly anticipated release, and for good reason. There is a lot of awesome things that came out with this release, and really something for everyone. I'm going to want to start on a high level, on a most macro level, and talk about just some of the highlights. The slide is a bit intense, so I do not expect you to read all of it. The purpose is really to just highlight the fact that there really is such a wide variety of content covered, so much so that I can't cover it all today. So I do highly encourage you to go onto the Tableau website and look through the What's New page that we publish with every new release. Once I talk about the highlights, I'm going to go into Tableau Prep Builder. Talk about the new features that came out with this release. I'll go into Tableau Desktop and really focus on the authoring experience and how we've enhanced that. I'll move into the server and online ecosystem to talk about how we've enhanced collaboration and the ability to web edit. Chris said it very, very well himself when parity is reduced, right? It is truly, the goal is to become as equitable to Tableau Desktop as possible. I'm going to talk a little bit about the licensing improvements and how we've hopefully made admin's life easier. And then I'm going to end on arguably the most highly anticipated piece of this, which is the predictive analytics and the integration with Salesforce Einstein Discovery, which is our first formal packaged launch with the Salesforce ecosystem post-acquisition. So to start on this highlight page, we have really tried to revamp the data preparation process. We're investing and spending a lot of our research and development time and energy on making our data preparation process as easy for you as possible. One of those would be writing to Excel. We heard the community very, very loudly saying that Excel is still a piece of their deployment, so we wanted to make sure we addressed that. The authoring experience we've tried to enhance in a variety of different ways, some of which are more technical in nature, right? Using facets of our extensions, which leverages our extensions API, or writing level of detail calculations. But we've also tried to improve the authoring experience for folks who are more viewers, right? They're consuming content on the server. And alongside with the authoring experience for those viewers, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for them to collaborate with others within Tableau Online and Tableau Server through unified and intuitive notifications and metrics to allow them to consume content anywhere from any device. We've also enhanced data connectivity, adding web connectors in our web interface, web authoring, dialogue. Right now, there are fewer connectors in the web browser than in Tableau Desktop, and we're trying to eliminate that. We've enhanced our geospatial analysis. This deserves its own session. I could probably talk about our new mapping functionality for hours and hours. So if you are like me and you're a geospatial dork, I highly recommend you do a little bit more digging and Google that so you can see some of the great content that other Zen masters have already done with 2021.1 release. And last but not least, if you or your organization use Azure, we've enhanced the ability to leverage quite a wide variety of different Azure related facets of our product, as well as SAP HANA. Ask data and explain data, so our natural language processing and augmented analytics capabilities we've also enhanced, which partners and marries really closely with our AI-powered analytics capabilities, which I've already mentioned, centrally focuses on the ability to use Einstein Discovery, a Salesforce product, directly in Tableau. And we've also enhanced other features of our product, including add-ons such as data management and server management, trying to create a really cohesive end-to-end analytic solution with Tableau. So to start with Tableau Prep, do a little bit more of a deep dive here. The ability to output prep flows to Excel has been highly sought after for about a year now. There was a pain point previously in converting CSVs into Excel, and that is no longer a problem that you'll have to deal with. If you want to take a prep flow and export it out to Excel, it's just a one-click process. On top of the ability to export output files into Excel, we've also added the ability to incrementally refresh any data that is pulled in through our Salesforce connector. Incremental refreshes, which were previously launched in Prep just a few versions ago, are critically important because as data increases in volume and speed and importance, it's really important to make sure we're only pulling in the newest data for performance reasons, right? There's no reason to use the compute necessary to refresh a whole table, especially Salesforce data because there is so much of it, without doing it incrementally. So now you have the ability to do that if you're using any prep flows that connect to Salesforce data. Switching gears a bit, moving into Tableau Desktop, quick LODs is probably the feature that I am the most excited about. They are the most powerful calculation type in Tableau, in my opinion. And if you are not familiar with LODs or level of detail calculations, it allows you to freely aggregate data to the granularity of your choosing. So in other words, in Tableau, when you drag a measure into the view, it's going to aggregate to the granularity you define. In this case, you'll notice that the only field that I am using is this sales measure. I am not categorically dividing it by any dimensions. So it is aggregated to overall sum of sales. If I pull a dimension in, if I break it apart by category, you'll notice that my aggregation changes. It's no longer aggregating to overall sum of sales. It's aggregating to sum of sales by category. Let's say I didn't want to do that. Maybe I still want to have category in my view, but I want the number to still represent overall sum of sales. The way to do that in Tableau now is to open a calculated field, write your own calculated field to specify what level of granularity, in this case, you want to fix to, and specify the desired aggregation. This is a challenging facet of our tool. In fact, I spent hours and hours studying LODs before I took and passed my desktop certified professional exam. We wanted to improve that process. And so we tried to do so. You'll notice that with that calculation, if I drag that onto the view that I was previously showing, that fixed calculation worked, right? But the caveat is that I had to know how to write that calculation. Quick LODs completely eliminate the need to be able to write level of detail calculations yourself. I've supplemented some of these slides with mini demos or GIFs of me kind of showing what the process looks like, but anything that you want me to do a bit more deeper dive on, put it in the chat and I'm happy to incorporate that into my actual demo kind of towards the end of this presentation. But what you're seeing here is that with quick LODs, you're allowed to select a measure, simply drag and drop it onto the dimension that you want it aggregated to, and you're done. No opening the calculated field dialog box. We've also added the ability to simply click into a measure, go into this create click path, and simply select LOD. Neither of these were possible without this release, and it makes really controlling the level of aggregation much easier than it previously was. The next extremely exciting functionality that is released in 2021.1 are in-product extension gallery. Our extension gallery is what allows you to leverage the incredibly powerful predictive models by Einstein Discovery But it also lets you leverage any other tools. Maybe you're not a Salesforce customer, or you're not in the Salesforce ecosystem, and you use other products in the BI stack. That is completely okay. This extensions add-on, this extensions gallery lets you add any extension you want to a Tableau dashboard in just a few clicks, really, really easily. Right now, we have a subset of predefined extensions. You'll notice some of the main Tableau partners here, like Data Robot. But in due time, we'll let you create your very own and add them to your extension gallery so that any user can leverage, developer-made APIs custom to your organization, however they'd like within Tableau. We've enhanced connecting to web data. I spoke to this on my highlights page, but we have added 4 unique connectors that were previously only possible to connect to in Tableau Desktop. That is Amazon Athena, Apache Drill, OData, and SharePoint lists. So now through the web editing interface, any creator can go in and connect to these additional data sources without having to open Tableau Desktop. Kind of in line with the Tableau Online or Tableau Server experience, that web authoring view, we've made it possible to now really customize what you're seeing in the web editor just as much as you can in Tableau Desktop. In this case, and in this example, we've let you drag and drop headers on the web. And to be completely honest with you, when our product managers came to us and said, we've released this, I was actually surprised. I thought that you could already do this in Tableau Online because you can, of course, in Tableau Desktop, right? You can drag and drop any measure or dimension in the view and reorganize without any kind of formal sort. You could just drag 2 columns, for example, right next to each other if you wanted to compare them. But previously you had to download the workbook and do that in Tableau Desktop should you actually want that functionality. Now, creators and explorers through the web editing browser have the ability to go in and do exactly what you're seeing here, right? Reorganizing the view, restructuring the view however they see fit to compare whatever numbers are most prevalent to them directly in the web browser. Additionally, in the web browser, we have pretty significantly enhanced our Ask Data natural language processing feature. For those of you who are less familiar or do not currently leverage Ask Data is a powerful natural language processing data engine that allows users to type their queries as if it's a question. So maybe sum of sales by category in the example that you're seeing here. And Tableau takes that and auto-generates a view based off of that query and looking at to confirm the fields that you've specified. So as long as sales and category, and in this case, order date are in the data set, Tableau will create that view for you. It's incredibly powerful, but to our surprise internally at Tableau, we pretty commonly heard that people weren't leveraging it as much as we thought they would. So we wanted to address that. We wanted to fix that. This new Ask Data enhancement creates a pop-up guided walkthrough experience for any first-time user. When a first-time user selects a data source, they'll see this informational pop-up box telling them, hey, here's your setup guide, here are some queries you can try, links to training videos and online help documentation, and even better yet, rather than having to go into the Tableau community and submit a formal idea for features that are not formally supported, we've built the ability to give product feedback directly to our Tableau Online and Tableau Server PMs in that interface. This may sound cheesy, but we truly care about your opinion. If you're using this and you're seeing gaps or you're noticing things that you wish you had in this interface, let us know, right? And we would love to try to incorporate that in future releases. The second piece of how we have improved and really enhanced Ask Data is giving the authors, so people who upload data sources or server admins, people who are permissioning and controlling data sources, the ability to control how the data sources are indexed and queried. This is essentially a fancy way of saying that they can specify what is already being pre-aggregated, what fields are available to leverage Ask Data, and what should be pre-indexed when a data source is selected. This is really helpful because it helps server admins and site admins make the site as performant as possible in ways they previously couldn't. You're able to create a really, really fast and performant user experience for every user in the ecosystem, including those site admins, but of course, right, affecting those viewers who we hope will be leveraging Ask Data. Final thought on Ask Data. We will be releasing Ask Data, and I just kind of alluded to it, so spoiler alert. Right now, it is only for those Explorer roles, but we are eliminating that restriction. Any licensed user in Tableau, creators, viewers, and explorers will be able to leverage Ask Data shortly. Another facet of the Tableau Online and Tableau Server experience that was enhanced with 2021.1 release are unified notifications. So there are a couple different facets of this new feature, one of which is the notification center giving you more information about what each notification actually is. So that can be someone tagging you in a view, that can be letting you know that your extract or your prep flow failed to refresh, whatever it may be, more information about when, where, and even why, right? Potentially error messages as to why something isn't happening or an error is arising. In the very last example here in my notification center view, you'll see that we include how many times it failed, when the last refresh failed, and even start offering suggestions on how to resolve that error. Similarly, through these notifications, we wanted to make them actionable. So we're not only going to tell you, here are some potential ways to resolve them, but we want to make it so that you can actually take action in just a few clicks. So with the action menu, let's use the example of a prep flow failing. You have the ability to simply just rerun the prep flow directly through this notification center and watch it in real time to ensure that it runs successfully. You also, of course, have full ability to specify how, when, and what you are being notified about. If you want some notifications to only be within the Tableau ecosystem, you can select that. If you want both Tableau and via email, you can select that as well. So full customizability about what you want to see, where you want to see it, and what the alerts are referring to. Another really great feature are metrics. For those of you who are not currently using metrics, we released metrics a year ago, so Tableau 2020.2, to help customers track points from numbers or visualizations on a view without having to create dedicated KPI dashboards. So it requires expertise and time and energy to create just these really simple snapshots. So we wanted to make it just one click. So now on a dashboard, if there is a particular measure or metric that you want to monitor over time, you can create a formal Tableau metric and view them on any device, anytime, anywhere. They were actually specifically designed to be mobile friendly, which is why I've included this mobile GIF here. In our new release, what we've done is made metrics in the view directly on the dashboard. So previously you weren't able to track exactly how many metrics your users had created on a specific dashboard, but now through this dedicated metrics tab, you can see all of the different metrics that are tied to a view and then even go in and further edit them if they need to be tweaked. Finally, in terms of just overall server and site management, we have enhanced licensing in a couple different ways, and I've only just picked one because this is one that I heard from my customers very, very regularly, and it's that they hate having to restart their server every time they purchased additional licensing. We've eliminated that. We now have a zero downtime for server and site changes, right? So that can include term extensions, user capacity changes, features added, core licenses added, anything that is going to change the architecture or the number of users in your deployment. We've now tried to reduce downtime as much as possible. In most cases, eliminated it. You can do it dynamically while the server is still on. Okay, so I have saved the best for last. The last piece of this puzzle of what we just released in 2021.1 is this AI-powered analytics, primarily driven through Salesforce Einstein. Salesforce Einstein, again, for those of you who may be less familiar with it, is Einstein built into the Salesforce platform to really surface smart insights, predictions, and machine learning algorithms with clicks, not code. So you do not need to be a programmer or a developer to leverage these predictive models to really, take actionable insights from your data in ways that you just previously couldn't. In Tableau, Einstein Discovery saves creators time and cost, right? To that previous point, they no longer need to be data scientists or work with IT, spending days creating predictive models, right? We offload that work, we do that work for you. You can increase productivity in operationalizing predictive models within Tableau dashboards and really deliver actionable insights to every user, including those explorers and viewers. There are a few different ways that you can leverage this great add-on, Einstein Predictions and Einstein Discovery in Tableau. The most common thus far, what we're seeing customers really gravitate towards, is through the dashboard extensions example that I was previously talking about, the extensions gallery. By leveraging extensions, customers can use that ability that's baked into Salesforce without having to actually be in Salesforce and put it directly in Tableau, right? The Einstein Discovery dashboard extension uses similar OAuth technology that's similar to using Google BigQuery or even just standard Salesforce connector. We store that token and we essentially create a single sign-on experience to make it as easy as possible for you, as seamless, as much synergy as possible to not break that flow of analysis and surface relative insights wherever you want them to be. The second way to leverage Einstein in Tableau is through table calculations. We have written all the syntax for you. So what you're seeing in this photo above would exist within the Salesforce ecosystem. It is a calculation that we wrote that tells you these are all the different variables that you could build a predictive model on, copy and paste it into Tableau. And when you put it in a Tableau calculated field, you then have the ability to enhance it with dynamic parameters and other fields that you can then further manipulate and change. So a highly flexible way to create the models that are auto-generated by Salesforce Einstein, put them into Tableau, and then make them more of your own and more dynamic through the Tableau functionality that you know and love. So I know that part can be a little bit harder to wrap our brain around, so I wanted to start by demoing that. But before I do so, let me pause and see if there's any questions in the chat.
Yeah. So Bailey, there were a couple. So regarding the
Perfect.
incremental refresh in prep, what's the minimum frequency for that? Do you know offhand?
Yep, absolutely. So it's going to depend in Tableau Online versus Tableau Server. Generally speaking, the refresh frequency is about 15 minutes, but we don't actually see customers leveraging that. I would say typically customers refresh their flows once an hour maximum.
Okay. All right, great. And sort of along those lines with incremental refresh, do they support updates to the refresh, or is it still just an add to the extract?
Oh, so when you say update, I guess explain can we talk about the question a little bit?
I believe what the
pending?
question is, yeah, well, not just a pending, but yeah, a pending, but is it actually updating existing records as well?
Yeah, I meant the updated or deleted data in the source. Can the increment handle that?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, so like writing back more or less to the source table, the output table. Thank you for unmuting yourself, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
It absolutely can.
Very cool. That's a great feature. Yes. Another question we
I'm
had
loving
was,
these questions.
Yeah, these are good. These are good. Keep them coming.
Keep them coming. Yeah.
Are the extensions in the extensions gallery free?
Mixed. Some of them are, some of them aren't. The example that I'm really talking about, this Einstein discovery in Tableau, is a paid feature, but we being Tableau, have designed licensing packages for every different type of user. So you could come to us and say, we want to leverage, intelligent predictions, but we don't want to have to pay, for Salesforce. So we're not using Salesforce, no problem. We can get that to you, without having to worry about also becoming Salesforce customers, in that same breath. Or if you are Salesforce customers, there's like a dedicated license package for you. So some of them are the ones that are developed by Tableau specifically or Salesforce specifically. We have quite a bit of flexibility, especially since they're newer products that we're kind of just now bringing to the table.
Okay, great. And sort of along those lines, does Einstein require additional user licensing?
It does, Lawrence, thank you for the question. But similar story, right? It just depends on your use case, your infrastructure, if you're currently using Salesforce. If not, but I will say that we have tried to make the pricing pretty reasonable to get started.
Exactly. All right. And another question as well. So for the OData connector via the web, does that mean that you don't have to start with it in desktop? You can just publish when you publish. You can just connect directly from Tableau Online.
That is exactly what I mean, right? So with those web authoring experiences, when you connect to a data source through Tableau Online, and let's see, I think I actually had a tab up to demo this. You no longer have to worry about connecting in desktop as well. But I will say that generally speaking, if you are going to build a workbook from the ground up, we would still recommend going into Tableau Desktop first. But any of these connectors that are in this current demo work that I'm using, you would not have to start in desktop. You could just leverage them directly through the online or server browser.
Yes, and then one last question before we jump to the demo. Someone asked, did I just hear that there's a write back feature in 2021.1? Could someone please share if they've had write back experience? I believe I know the answer to this. I mean, you were talking about via an extension, right? So there's some extensions out there to do write back, correct?
Great job, Chris. You should come work at Tableau. So
yeah.
Right? This is a job offer. No. So Tableau Prep actually can write back to transactional databases right now. So MySQL, SQL Server, we can, and I guess I should use the word write back carefully. We can write to those databases, but we are adding on the ability to do so. Right now, we have the most flexibility through extensions, but I will say, yes, it is actually now baked into Tableau Prep Builder to append, to write to transactional databases.
Okay, great. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump to the demo. I know we have about 10 minutes left, so.
Yes. And keep these questions coming as I'm kind of demoing. I'll field these as well, and I'll go a little bit quick. I know I had a lot of content, so sorry that there isn't as much Q&A, but I love these kinds of conversations. So you're also always welcome to message me on LinkedIn or reach out to me otherwise, and we can continue this conversation. So what you're seeing here is a Tableau dashboard, of course, right? But this square where it starts at reset filters and ends at this total assets filter is an extension, right? This tile is a dashboard extension that is showing you Einstein predictions. Similar to any other tile on a Tableau dashboard, it's going to be responsive to the filters. You'll notice that if I change the startup business filter, now my predictions are changing, and this makes sense. So some background here, I am a financial services solution engineer. I work primarily in wealth management and insurance, so I have conversations like this several times a day. Customers will come to me, they want to make sure that they're making smart business decisions, and in this example that I have pulled up here, it's about commercial loan defaults. We want to reduce the risk of defaulting on a loan, and how can I make sure that the customers that we're actively pursuing have lower default risks than others, right? So by changing this startup business filter to no, right? So this is a more tenured business, a business that's been around for longer. You notice that default risk prediction decreased. That's what we would expect. If I remove it, it's going to go back up to 61. So this predictions window, this predictions extension allows me to interact with the content on a Tableau dashboard, right? Adjust filter values and see how the changes that I'm making are changing not only this risk, which is top of mind, for many of these businesses, but other top predictors and ways to improve it. So let's even try, maybe years in business. We already know it's not a startup, but if I reduce that a lot, In this case right now, I'm saying I want my years in business to be 1 to 4 years. It spiked back up, right? Because it's a less mature business. So it's telling you all of these things in real time through other types of Tableau interactivity. And none of these dynamic predictions or changes requires you to do anything inside of Salesforce, any type of coding, and any kind of programming. Pausing, any questions at all in the chat or what I'm describing, I definitely encourage you to toss them out, or we can kind of revisit this before I move on, but this is definitely one of the
very cool, very cool. Yeah,
things.
I think for the sake of time, I guess, yeah, let's go to the other ones and we'll see what else we have. And let's do questions at the end.
Awesome. So I know I kind of had this in GIF form already, but I wanted to kind of call this out again. So if I wanted to write an LOD, right, if I drag my sum of sales out, that same number that I had, this is so cool that I felt the need to do it live as well. Simply dragging a measure onto any dimension creates a new calculation for me, right? This new sales subcategory. In this case, I'm writing a level of detail expression saying I want to aggregate sales to subcategory. And I know that because after that drag and drop, I can actually open that calculated field syntax, see the calculation and before I use it. And then if I wanted to, I could, of course, further customize it, right? So really, really cool, really, really easy. Previously, much more labor intensive to write these level of detail calculations. And then the other option would be, going in, selecting LOD from there. But that drag and drop is just really phenomenal, something you definitely could not do previously in Tableau.
I have a question around that. Can you drag it onto two dimensions?
Good question. So right now it is just one dimension, but we're getting there.
I'll write an email.
Right? Yeah, definitely. Yes, David. It's such a good question. I think that was actually one of my questions too when we started like trialing the beta, because I was like, I can't get enough of this. Like I want nested LODs, and they're like, relax, not yet.
It's on its way. Okay.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So then the other thing that I kind of wanted to demo live, more than just some GIFs or some pictures, was this Ask Data Help Center. So I guess let's even zoom out one step further. Ask Data, as I was kind of describing, but now I can show you, write my query in plain English, almost kind of like a Google search, right? Natural language processing is behind the scenes here. When I make that selection, I then, Tableau is auto-generating for me. But the coolest part of this is maybe I'm newer to this or just getting started. I still have the ability to then go into this help center. And as I described, giving product feedback, going to training resources. And then if I'm a server admin, really cool stuff here. This usage analytics button gives me tons of insight into how people are leveraging my Ask Data queries. So you can see how many users wrote questions. This is my personal demo org. So not the best example for tons of different user questions, but you can see how many different users, how many different types of questions, how many actually rendered a visualization. And this is really helpful because if people are asking questions that Ask Data isn't successfully rendering a viz, you can then go in on the back end, right, change the schema or ensure that those fields are exposed so that those queries are going to render a viz or create a visualization. So as an admin, you have almost full control and lots of insight to make sure that your end users are having as seamless of an experience as possible.
That's super cool. Well, I know we have about 3 minutes left, Bailey. So if you had to pick one more to show, what would you do?
Oh man, good question. Honestly, just metrics. So if I would actually rather field questions, if there are any at all, or any final thoughts, as opposed to showing something. So I'll pause. I know 2 minutes, guys. I'm putting everyone on the spot.
Well, I don't see any new questions coming in. So other than
then I have a question.
Really cool stuff.
Awesome, thank you. I have a question for everyone then. Based on all of the things that you saw me kind of demo today, it would be amazing if you could just write up the feature that you're the most excited about, or the feature that you think that you're going to use. I'm curious what the audience is most gravitating towards.
That's great. Yes, that's a little curveball. We'll throw back to our event survey, which I have posted in the chat. So you guys give your feedback. What do you think is the coolest feature you saw today? and let us know. We'll collect that information and share it at the next Tug. So I know we're coming up on time.
Amazing.
Bailey, thank you very much. We're seeing LODs right now, early preview.
Right.
Looks like that's the winner. Very cool.
Woo!
But yeah. So thank you very much to all of our presenters, Simon, Chris, Bailey. You guys did a tremendous job. Thank you. Virtual round of applause here. So just a couple closing remarks, everybody. Our next Tug will be May 13th, so everybody please tune in. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, we have a Tug Advisory Board, which is a large group actually of individuals that meet every other week. And we work really hard to find you great presenters and content ideas. And so if you'd like to be a part of this organization, feel free to reach out to me or anyone else on the Tug, and we'll get you involved. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we'll talk to you next month. Take care.